What is going on, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of my character builds. So episode 1 was my healer. This is episode 2, which is my Magicka Templar. And then we're going to be making a Stamsork, Nightblade, and then a tank video later. But anyway, this is also the second most requested one that I currently have. So we're going to be going over everything. If you are looking for a quick just overview of what I use, this is essentially everything I have, so you can look at it. But if you want a more detailed explanation on what build I use and why, stick around. So take a look at this. Feel free to screenshot it if you need to. And yeah, we're going to be going into everything in about 5 seconds. So get your screenshots. And okay, good. So let's start off with our Mundus stone. We have the Thief. This is because we want more spell critical. Well, this just gives critical in general, so whether you are a stam or magic character, Thief is generally the better choice. After that, we have health and magicka food, which is blue food. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then our attributes, we have 52 into magic and 12 into health. Now, based on your playstyle, if you think you can survive with under 18,000 health, feel free to dump all your points into Magicka. I just like having the extra survivability. Also, because I don't have a few other pieces that I haven't fully upgraded yet. Once I get a heavy piece, that'll increase my Undaunted, which I should be raising that up. And then we'll be dropping some health points and then raising it into Magicka. But as of right now, from what my playstyle is, I can technically beat every trial on vet with this setup. So technically this is good, but it's not like 100%. I would say this is like 95% done. Overall, you'll still be doing top damage and everything, so how you build it is up to you. We chose a Dark Elf because our build is going to be mostly fire, and the passives you get for this one are generally increased flame damage, you increase magicka, which is generally good, and flame resistance, and more magicka and stamina. So everything that has to do with like fire and magic is very good for this one. So first of all, let's talk about our build, because I assume a lot of you guys want to see that first. So we are using 5 pieces of Burning Spellweave, 5 body pieces actually. We're still waiting for the Divines piece from City of Ash. I've run that dungeon like, I don't know, hundreds of times, and it still won't give me a Divines piece. So that's why this is the only piece that's not gold at the moment. But overall, the damage difference I don't have is very minimal, maybe like less than 1,000 from top damage, but that's okay. As long as we have the effect bonus, that's generally all that really matters. Once I get the Divines, essentially what happens is my Magicka goes up by about like 60 or 100, and I get about, I don't know, 500 damage from the 7% from the Mundus stone. That's essentially it. And then we have 2 Grothdar pieces. Now, what ideally you want is either a heavy and a medium piece. Unfortunately, Vaults of Madness is the only way to get the helmet on Veteran, which is a very easy dungeon to do. It's just kind of tedious because that dungeon is pretty long. But unfortunately, I do not have a heavy Divines helmet. The only thing I have is a light one, and then we have a medium shoulders. But if I get a heavy, that will increase my resources a little bit higher, just because of the Undaunted passive. But overall, ideally, in terms of damage, nothing changes. The only thing that changes if I get a heavy is that my health pool and magic pool will be a little bit higher. So whatever you get, as long as you really have the 2-piece set, that's good enough. But if you want like min-max top damage, you're going to want to have a heavy and a medium. And it doesn't really matter if the heavy is on the shoulder and the medium is on the chest, or not chest piece, but shoulder and helmet. But it doesn't matter. As for our jewelry, we have a 4-piece of Moon Dancer. Now, the reason why we only have 4 instead of 5 is because I don't have the dual-wield swords. I've been trying to farm it, but ideally I can't because RNG and this game hates me. So we do have a Moon Dancer Lightning Staff. We have it on back bar, and our main one is a Maelstrom Inferno Staff, which is our damage. So like I said earlier, our main damage source is going to be from fire damage. That's why it's an Inferno staff. And I understand not everyone is going to be able to use a Maelstrom staff because Maelstrom is not an easy thing to complete. So if you can complete other trials and stuff, if you have any other staff, like a Master Staff from Dragonstar Arena, that kind of works, I guess. But since you won't be using any set pieces, because there's like no extra room for this, so you could replace Moon Dancer for like Infallible if you wanted to. That'll also give you the 4-piece bonus. You get this in Craglorn Trials, and I would honestly say Craglorn Trials are a lot easier than Maelstrom in general. And then Moon Dancer comes from Mauve Lorcage, which is the toughest trial in the game in my opinion. But if you can do it on normal, I'm sure, as long as you know the mechanics, it's not a difficult dungeon to do. So that's what we use. Main bar, Maelstrom Inferno, and back bars and Moon Dancer to go with the 4-piece. So yeah. The reason, okay, so if you don't have a Maelstrom or don't have any Craglorn experience, you could use pretty much anything else you wanted. You could use like a dual wield Torx pack, or you could just take out the Moon Dancer entirely and just use like a 5-piece of anything else, I guess. Well, not anything else. I would say Torx pack for spell damage, Julianos for more crit, and like 3 of those. Well, actually, you won't be able to do it on jewelry. You're going to have to get pretty much, if you don't have Maelstrom, it's gonna change up the build a lot. You could get Burning Spellweave jewelry, and then you'd have to use 3 jewelry for Burning Spellweave, and then 2 chest pieces, and then 3 of any craftable here, and then 2 dual wield for here. But ideally, this is my build and how I set it up. That's what you guys want to know. So we have that, and next thing on our list is our skill points, and then after that we'll go over champions. So this is our main bar, and this is our back bar. So main bar, we have Blockade of Fire. This is one of the highest damage things, believe it or not. You cast this as an 8-second duration ability. So you cast it, wait 8 seconds, cast it again. Puncturing Sweep is your main damage ability. This is your spammable, and essentially you'll do a lot of damage with it. Reflective Light, now this one doesn't do a lot of damage, but what it does is when you hit an enemy with the target, or you hit an enemy with the Reflective Light, it increases your spell critical rating by 2191, assuming yours is maxed out. And then it does flame damage, which also procs your Grothar helmet, so your 2-piece monster helmet, it'll proc the effect. And we have, of course, our Execute, Radiant Oppression. One of the top executes in the game, just does so much damage. It's pretty much a must for every Templar. Whether you're a healer or DPS, you pretty much just have Radiant Oppression by default. Because Zos decided this will be extremely good and pretty much outclass everything else in terms of executes. Now, our 5th one we're going to have on both bars, we have Inner Light. Now, the reason why we have Inner Light is because of our Mages Guild. Now, what this does essentially is increases your max magic by 5%, increases your spell critical by 2191. So it's generally good. It's a passive. You don't have to cast it anymore, along with Magicka Controller. So for every Mage's Guild ability you have slotted, you get more magic and recovery. So generally increasing your total pool, and that's good. So this is your main damage bar. And then the second one will be your dot bar, or dots and, like, I don't know, buffs or something. So, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, Fiery Rage is the Destruction Ultimate. The reason why we have that is because it is actually top damage in terms of ultimate right now, especially with the Fire Staff. The Fire Staff increases your damage by 10%, while the Ice one like immobilizes enemies, and Thunderous one just lasts a little bit longer. So fire, we want more damage, generally good. And then so now we're going on to our back bar. We have Ritual of Retribution. Words are hard today. That is currently under the Restoring Light. Now occasionally I switch this out depending on what we're doing. So if you have Channeled Focus, this also works too. You replace it with that. But overall, generally, I like having Ritual. and it's generally like a bigger area. So like this one, huge circle, you just stand in it, enemies in the circle take damage, you get healing, and it's generally pretty good. Next we have Harness Magicka. This is our light ability, the only one here. It generally gives you a shield, so it's really good. It's an insta cast. You just get like a shield based off your default without food health bar. So you essentially have unlimited shields, and it's not that expensive to cast. So occasionally, depending on what you're doing, if you are taking a lot of damage and you are new to something, you could switch this for your reflective light, assuming you are running 2 Destro staffs. Well, if you are running 2 Destros, you could also replace it with Blockade of Fire and Reflective Light, and you could put Harness on your main bar, just so it's a little bit easier to spam it in case you do need it. But if you are good and know how to play your character, just swapping bars and hitting your button is not a big deal. Now we have Blazing Spear. This one is also a slot where you can replace it for pretty much anything else in here. So this one essentially just gives a synergy to your enemy, or not your enemies, your other allies. And if you are playing solo, it just does more damage than the Luminous Spears. So for healers, you would generally get the other morph, but if you're trying to do damage, a Blazing Spears is the way to go. But if you don't need it, you could always use Repentance if you're playing solo. You could choose Channel Focus as well. And it does kind of seem nice. Let's show you how this rotation would work. You toss down your Blockade, swap bars, Ritual, and then this thingy right here, and then your Harness. So that's kind of what it looks like. But anyway, next thing we have on our list is Trap Beast. Now, technically, I don't have this morph because I just recently unlocked it, but the morph we would be choosing of Trap Beast would be Rearming Trap. And what that one does is after like 7 seconds or so, you just automatically like rearm it, which gives you the critical again, and they're just trapped and take more damage, so you don't have to recast it as often. And essentially what this does is if you get critical damage when an enemy is stunned or stands in it. So let's test it out on our target dummy right now, how this would work. And then our back bar is Meteor. We don't really use Meteor that much unless it's for stuns, but the reason why we use this one is because of the Mage's Guild passive. We get more magic, so back bar healing and all that stuff is generally good. So if you don't have that one, honestly, you could use anything else, ideally. Nova is a good choice. If you don't have that one, having the Destro on both bars is also okay, but ideally you would want Meteor, or if you do PvP a lot, you could Warhorn back bar. Now technically Warhorn is only good if you're running like trials or large group content. Your damage will be a little bit lower if you use Warhorn, but it helps the group. So depending on how it's going, you could do that, but ideally that's like your last choice. So how this would work in combat, I do have videos of me actually doing trials with this build. So what you're going to want to do first is, if you're on your main bar, you toss this down, and then that should proc it. Toss down the trap. You can toss down your AoEs as well, and then just jabs it. And then if you toss down the reflective light, your critical would be a little bit higher. And then you spam your thingy, your puncturing sweeps. And then once it goes down to execute phase, which is under 70, I'm sure you guys already know, just beam it from that, and then you'll be good to go. That's the rotation, a little bit slower. Blockade of Fire. That is the one you're going to want to cast every like 7 seconds or 8. And then after you toss the trap down, you can toss your dots or your spears. If you don't have the ritual or cleansing, you can toss down spears as well. Essentially the same thing. Toss the light and then jabs. And try to like toss in like light attacks to every ability if you can. That just increases your damage, but ideally that's like the last thing you really want to work out. Then your ultimate. Make sure to, if you have a Maelstrom staff, targets affected by your Wall of Elements, which is essentially your blockade, take more damage from light and heavy attacks. So if you can light weave, that's good. Toss this down, and then you can ultimate. which just does so much damage, and it has a wide radius. But yeah, that's essentially the build. Now that we have done that, we are going into our champion points. Oh yeah, we'll actually talk about potions a little bit later. But we're going into our champion points now. Keep in mind before I show you anything, this is what works for me. What works for me does not work for everyone else. So just as a general idea, let's start with the easy ones. If you are playing a magic character, reduce the Magicka cost of all spells by 16%. This is a must-have for every Magicka character. You max this one first, and then you max Arcanist second. Increases your Magicka recovery. There are really only 2 good slots for the green tree. If you are magic, you get those 2, Arcanist and Magician. If you are stamina, you get Warlord and Mooncalf. So there's really only 2 choices here. And then occasionally you could put some points into Tumbling and take it out of Arcanist if you really need it, but that's like the last choice depending on what you're doing. Now here in the red tree, we have a split of 89-89 in the Hardy and Elemental Defender. These are the 2 most important things you're going to want to put it in because it grants you percentage of resistances and to pretty much elements and physical damage, so you want to max these out first. Thick Skinned reduces the damage from dots, which is damage over time. Technically, if you don't need it, if you don't think you need it anyway, you just put more, split like another 6 points into each in here. But let's say you aren't champion point capped. What you're going to want to do is evening this Hardy and Elemental Defender. So let's say you have 20 champion points, 10 into here, 10 into here, and you're good to go. Just keep doing that all the way up to 600. Now I do have quick recovery. I have 10 points into here because it increases the effectiveness of healing received. Now the reason why we have that is because of our ability right here. It heals you and nearby allies. So now granted it's only 4%, it's not that much, but it is still 4% more and you don't want to die. So yeah. It also affects your, I think it affects your puncturing when it heals you for a little bit. So 43%. Good. Alright, so next we have everything in here. I think we just talked about this one. This is kind of optional depending on how you play, and along with the quick recovery. If you don't think you need the extra points into the other 2, just put 100 and 100 in here and you'll be good to go. Now we have points into the blue tree. This is the very important one. So, we have 100 in Elemental Expert. This is a must-have for every Magicka DPS character. Increases your elemental damage. You want to max this out first. That is top priority. And then next we have 25 into Elfborn. Now what that one does is increases your damage and healing by spell criticals. This also goes really well with the Thief Mundus Stone. So that increases your crit chance, and if you crit, you do more damage, and that increases your damage by criticals. That's good. And then we have 75 into Thaumaturge. Now, it increases the effectiveness of damage over time abilities. This is a very important one. This doesn't really tell you this in the tooltip, but Puncturing Sweeps is actually a damage over time ability. We all thought it was channeled, so technically it is a damage over time because it does like a few hits. So channel does not always equal damage over time, but apparently in ESO it does. So this is a damage over time. This is a damage over time. This here, I think this one counts as it, but it's to execute anyway. Fiery Rage is dot. This is a dot as well, trap. So essentially all your abilities are damage over time. That's why you want it. So good to have, and that's why I put it into there. So that's our skills, and let's see, what else do we have to talk about? Oh yeah, potions. We use blue potions and food. We use blue ones. Now technically there are other choices, but as long as you get health and magicka, that is what you want. In terms of potions, you could use the regular drop, the ones that are found everywhere. But what else I use is the Essence of Spell Power. Now, granted, this one is expensive. You should only use it in like trials or dungeons, and not just like fighting random trash mobs everywhere in the world. So I kind of switch depending on what I'm doing. But if you like fighting bosses and stuff, the Essence of Spell Power is going to be the good one. And then after that, it's kind of irrelevant. Just have a lot of soul gems. But yeah, overall, that has been the build. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer any questions or try to review your build. But yeah, once again, if you want to check it out, everything I have is right here. Feel free to take a screenshot. And yeah, the only thing that I would probably replace is this Burning Spell Reave robe. If I could get Divines, then that will be replaced. And if I get 2 dual-wield Moondancer swords, that will also take out the Lightning Staff. But overall, this works out really well. And I do have videos of me doing this in trials, so technically I could beat everything with the current setup I have right now. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys later.